Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 43 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 84, Stripping the Varnish. After retrieving Tenya's boots from the adhesive, Ochako and he made their way to the monitor room to rejoin their friends. Thankfully, Aoyama said that he needed to restyle himself in the bathroom for a bit, so he wasn't too torn up about it. And neither are we, the gravity user thought to herself. She couldn't place it, but for some reason, the glittery blonde boy had always given her a weird vibe, and not because of his personality or the way he acted. He just seemed off in some way, and she wasn't sure why that was. Probably nothing, though, she shrugged off as they finally arrived and the door opened for them. There, they were met immediately by Izuku and the others, though the roster of onlookers had significantly increased since Ochako had left. Now Strongarm had joined the group as well, along with Momo, too. Their smiles all widened upon their arrival, with RC being the first to greet them. Ah, there she is. The pink-haired Autobot threw her hands up toward Ochako, looking for a hug. Our little Tide Turner herself. RC. Ochako blushed immediately, suddenly feeling sheepish even as she accepted the embrace. You're so sweet. And Tenya. Strongarm came up and placed a hand on his shoulder. What a final act of heroism. Going so far as to launch yourself out of your own shoes to help her. Tenya, in turn, saluted the cadet. I did so in the name of victory, Strongarm. It was far from what we had planned, but I am quite proud of our performance. He also gave a bow to her as well. I appreciate the kind words. Congratulations to the both of you. Momo concurred as the other students came up. Izuku raised his fists excitedly. You two were great out there. If I were sitting down, I'd have been on the edge of my seat. Just one thing, though. Mina piped up, eyeing Ochako suspiciously. Girl, what the heck did Aoyama say to you that made y'all let go of the railing? Oh yeah, we all saw you yell at him after that, too. Bulkhead noted. In response, Ochako rolled her eyes and said, PSH, okay, you're not gonna believe this. Everybody leaned in, now quite intrigued. Aoyama, for some weird reason, thought it'd be appropriate to ask me if I liked a certain someone during the fight with 13. He even asked me if I was thinking about them while I was trying to come up with a plan in the heat of the moment. That took everyone aback. Whoa, seriously. Mina tilted her head. That's super weird. I mean, okay, Aoyama is a bit odd, but that just seems out of place. Who'd he ask if you liked, though? RC inquired. Ochako remained tight-lipped and glanced away as she slowly raised her arm and pointed toward Izuku. The others all looked at the green-haired boy as he himself wore an incredulous face and pointed at himself. Wait, me. Aoyama thought that you had a crush on me. I know, it's crazy, right? Ochako stammered awkwardly, only to realize what she just said and began backpedaling while flailing her arms. And no, wait, I didn't mean it to sound so mean. I'm sure you're a great guy, Deku, but I really see you more as a friend, you know. No hard feelings, but I really think it's best if. Uraraka, I'm not upset or anything. Izuku assured, causing Ochako to stop in mid-flail. He gave her a kind smile and nodded to her. And yeah, I agree. I see you as a good friend, too. With her cheeks flushed red, Ochako took a deep breath to try and calm herself down. So, you're not, like, totally embarrassed right now. Izuku could only offer a shrug. I mean, a little, but I wouldn't let what Aoyama said get to you. After all, I'm sure that you're pretty focused on getting your hero career off the ground. Oh, of course I am. Ochako said, suddenly finding her nerve again. And you're right. He's got no idea what he's talking about. Besides, you and Kyoka clearly have something going on. When those words left her mouth, Izuku promptly stiffened up with an, "URK." And then fell flat on his back, completely frozen. Deku. Oh, you said the, K, word. Mina said cheekily. Momo placed her hands on her hips, peering down to Izuku with a knowing smirk. Really, Midoriya, these theatrics aren't necessary. We all know how much you like her. It was Izuku's turn to become beet red as he hid his face behind his hands. Why you don't have to go blurting it out, though, before any more could be said, however. Team Jiro, Ojiro and Koda. Practical exam. Ready, go. The group did a double take and spun toward the monitor, while Izuku snapped up straight. It's her turn. Just then, the door to the monitor room slid open once more, signaling the arrival of Jazz and the return of Sideswipe and Sunstreaker, who had Jiro and Denki in tow. The five of them were practically sprinting to get in, with Jazz sliding across the floor until he stopped in front of the group. Yo, did we miss Kyo's practical? He asked. No, you're just in time. Recovery Girl announced. They're just getting started. Good. Jiro said, nearly out of breath. Man, when Jazz started sprinting, I wasn't sure we'd be able to keep up. Denki, however, was about ready to keel over. So, tired, haven't recovered. Sunstreaker gave him a firm pat on the back, nearly sending him to the floor. Oh, quit your belly aching, dude. You'll live. Raising his fists eagerly, Sideswipe put all of his focus on the monitor. Yeah, now let's see how Kyoka and those guys do out there, huh? Pay attention, y'all. Jazz spoke as he helped Izuku off the ground, placing him back on his feet. You're about to see what a complete sonic drownout looks like. Courtesy of Kyoka Jiro. I wouldn't put too much stock in that, Jazz. Izuku said softly, even though he hated to admit it. Kyoka can make some noise, sure, but there's a reason Present Mike is a powerful hero in his own right. Training Ground Delta. After about an hour of planning things out with her teammates, Kyoka felt quite confident in their ability to pass the practical exam. Kinda. Alright, it wasn't an easy hour considering her lack of social skills, especially since she was interacting with classmates who weren't in her friend group. But, thankfully, she had found Ojiro and Koda to actually be pretty chill and understanding. Mainly because, as it happened, they too were somewhat socially challenged. Kyoka found that Masashiro Ojiro was a nice if kinda awkward guy. And Koji Koda. His intimidating, rock monster-like appearance belied a very shy demeanor, to the point where he communicated mostly through hand gestures, which was ironic since his quirk was, apparently, being able to talk to animals. Even so, they had agreed that a straightforward approach would be the best way to handle the practical, and that's exactly what they were about to do. So we're all clear, Kyoka said as they scoped out the area from behind a tree. We avoid combat with Present Mike as much as possible and head for the escape gate. Sounds good. Ojiro confirmed, the tailed boy perched in the branches above to better observe his surroundings. Koda gave a silent nod in agreement. Then let's hit it. Ojiro, take point. We're right behind you. On her word, Kyoka and the others dashed off, with Ojiro swinging through the trees ahead. However, at the exact opposite end of the forest, Present Mike himself stood in front of the escape gate, rather lackadaisically at that. He was already over being outside. Even just seeing the color green was making him uncomfortable. Let's hurry up and finish this set, he bemoaned as he stuck his fingers up. Some people got arbor ardor, but I'm more of a city kid, ya dig. Taking a deep breath, he unleashed his first attack with a yeah. All at once, huge sonic pulses escaped his throat and covered practically the entire forest, making all of the animals native to the training ground scatter in fear. And once the sound waves reached the teens, they were left in utter agony. Ojiro let out a scream and fell down, landing hard on his side as his hands whipped up over his ears. Gah! Gia! Ojiro! Kyoka screamed, her and Koji covering their own ears. So loud. Thankfully, the attack stopped before long, allowing the duo to help their teammate. Ojiro, are you okay? Why yeah, I think gah. The moment he tried to move his leg, however, Ojiro recoiled and brought it close to his side, feeling it twinge at the elbow. And nope, scratch that. I think I sprained my leg. Shit, Kyoka hissed, spinning around to her uninjured teammate. Koda, you can control animals with your quirk, can't you? Koda nodded to her silently. Okay, so get some birds to attack him or something. However, the Rocky Boy waved his hands, miming out what he wanted to say. Even if I wanted to order them to do that, Present Mike's voice would make them run away. Kyoka had gotten pretty good at learning this kind of communication after hanging out with Bumblebee, so she understood him perfectly, though that wasn't to say she wasn't too happy about it. Damn, his shouts make me feel like my eardrums are gonna burst. Her brow furrowed, only now understanding the gravity of their situation. He's not just better than I thought he'd be, he's like a superpowered death AMP. A speaker of doom. Ojiro slowly got up, keeping his hurt leg as still as he could while using his tail to balance himself. I could get close to him, if I could still swing in the trees. But even then, the closer I'd get, the more effective his attacks would be. Don't even try. Kyoka shook her head. Even if we could get close, he'd probably see us coming. I'll bet he's just standing at the gate, waiting for us. Right as she said that, another sonic attack reverberated around them, forcing them to cover their ears and take cover behind a big log. Kumo-o-o-o-o-o-n. I'm getting bored. Ojiro's first instinct was to cover his ears with both hands, but then the force of the attack was enough to send him toppling over. Gya. The pain that shot through his leg was almost overwhelming, and he didn't want to know how much more had to come before that line was crossed. We need some sort of plan. Kyoka clenched her jaw as she and Koda peered over the log, thinking of what to do next. We need a way to take down that voice. Her gaze drifted down, and that's when she noticed something near her hand. An ant. And then, an idea sparked in her head. She let the insect crawl onto her knuckles and she turned to Koji. Hey, Koda, you control bugs and stuff, right? Look at this. She presented the ant to him hopefully. An ally. The response she got was unexpected, to say the least. Ah. Koda grew pale and gave a high-pitched scream, taking Kyoka and Ojiro off guard. The earphone jack user brought her hand closer to Koda, and he screamed yet again, hightailing it to a nearby tree to hide. Ah. So, he doesn't like bugs. Kyoka concluded. Ojiro wore a sympathetic smile. Ha, who knew? I'm WAAAAAAAAIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIII. Kyoka had decided that enough was enough. This won't do much. She plugged her jacks into her boots, unleashing the biggest sonic attack that she could muster. But I can try to cancel him out. BWOOOOOOM. Thankfully, it managed to work somewhat, though only just barely. Across the forest, Present Mike actually staggered a little from the force of the sonic boom. Whoa, okay, some impressive subwoofers. The blonde hero concluded. Trainin' with that cool cat of an Autobot must've really cranked her stereo up. Still not as loud as me, though. Back with the teens, they were starting to run out of options, with Kyoka looking to Ojiro hopefully. Gah, do you have any plans, Ojiro? She shouted, struggling to hear herself over the ringing in her ears. Really wish I did, but, ow, nothing's coming to mind. Let's make some NOOOOOOIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIIII. Kyoka clutched her ears, but it only had very little effect. Her quirk was not well suited to something like this. We need a way to get past his voice. She thought to herself. At this rate, we won't even see him before time runs out. Once the attack stopped, she whipped her head back to the frightened rock boy. Koda, just tell me if it's possible for you to control bugs or not, okay? She saw him give a meager thumbs up from his hiding place, to which she plugged her jack into a nearby rock. Good. With a powerful sonic pulse, Kyoka shattered the boulder with ease, exposing the insects living under it. Ants, cockroaches, centipedes, even some earthworms. And they all frightened Koda to his core. Ah. Sorry, I know it's scary. Kyoka called, imploring for his help. But. The sudden yell from Present Mike took Kyoka off guard, leaving her ears exposed for just a second before she clamped her hands back over them. Even so, it was 1 second of utter agony. Ow. Our opponent is too strong. This is the only thing I can think of. If you pull it off, we might still have a chance. Please, Koda. Ojiro pleaded, still writhing in pain on the ground. You wanna be a hero, right? Then we gotta pass. Their words made Koji bring his head up, his eyes full of tears as he looked at his classmates. And it was then that he noticed something that made his stomach drop. Even through all of the pain, Kyoka was still smiling to him supportively, and her ears were dripping red. Jiro's ears are bleeding. Her and Ojiro are hurting, because of ME. His sights moved down to the collection of insects wriggling in the dirt, making him drop to his rear as he trembled fearfully. He clutched his head as he started to panic, unsure of what to do, but then, he remembered something. Something that his mother had said when he got his entrance exam results. You got into UA. Hi. I'm so happy for you. Oh, my little Koji, I'm so proud. Wait, I did get into UA. Hi. Where all the best pros are trained. Clenching his teeth, Koda brought his hands down, starting to find his resolve. My heart should be without fear. I have to be plus ultra. With that final push, Koji fell forward onto his knees and elbows, propping his face over the bugs to speak to them with his Ana voice. Go on, tiny ones, hear my call. Now is the time for you to take out the man who's responsible for all this terrible noise. Needless to say, Kyoka and Ojiro were both astonished. Not just for the fact that he was speaking, but also his voice was far from what they were expecting. Instead of being deep and intimidating, it was high and raspy. You can talk, Kyoka exclaimed. Huh, who knew? Ojiro commented. Back at the escape gate, Present Mike was tapping his foot and whistling a little tune, waiting to see if the students would be making any move. What's the deal? Are they gonna run the clock out and hide the whole time? Just then, he felt something move beneath his foot, bringing his gaze down toward the dirt below. There, he could see something pierce through the upper layer, and then it exploded with an uncountable number of creepy crawlies swarming up his leg. Guh! OGOOOO, ag. The teacher was starting to feel faint as they crawled up his leg, feeling incredibly overcome by the discomforting sensation. They're traveling underground where sound doesn't travel well. Aw man, this is why I hate the outdoors so much. Wham! Just then, from out of the woods, Koji came barreling through carrying the injured Ojiro on his back while Kyoka ran by his side. Not wanting to feel left out, though, the tail user slammed his muscly extra appendage into Present Mike's face, knocking him out while he foamed from the mouth. Sorry, Mr. Mike, but that was for the leg. The trio crossed the finish line, prompting the buzzer to sound. Team Jiro, Ojiro and Koda have passed the final. The entire monitor room was completely stunned into silence at the unexpected tactic they'd just witnessed. Out of all the things that any of them could have thought that Kyoka's team could use to win, Bugs wasn't one of them. Just looking at the state of Present Mike was enough to give them all the jitters. The only one who wasn't silent however were, predictably, Izuku and Jazz, who gave loud cheers the moment Kyoka sprinted across that finish line. Woo! Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The Autobot lieutenant shouted, pounding a fist against his chest. Way to show him. Haha. Yes. Izuku pumped his fist in victory. Kyoka's plan was great, and Koda's execution of it was so awesome. Top it all off with one final hit from Ojiro and things went a lot better than expected. Ahem, well, I suppose you could give them an A for creativity, at least. Tenya concluded with a wince. Yeah, and A, G, for gross. Ochako asserted. Mina stuck her tongue out as well. Blah, yeah, I could have gone my whole life without seeing that. It was only then, however, that she noticed that the resident nurse was fuming a little. Recovery girl. You okay? To answer her question, the elderly woman changed the camera view to focus on the very much incapacitated Present Mike. Laying on the ground on his side, still foaming at the mouth, with a horrified grin on his face. HMPH. I just can't believe he let a bunch of bugs beat him. That boy's always been averse to the outdoors, but I didn't think it was this bad. The Autobots and students all smiled with awkward chuckles at the nurse's words. Hee, well, even so, you gotta admit that it was a pretty clever play. Windblade reasoned, even if it was a bit unorthodox. I suppose, yes, Recovery Girl said as she got out of her chair for the first time that day. But, even if they won, there's still injuries to be treated. Though the fact that they're only cropping up now is a good thing. Before she could get to her temporary office across the room, marked with a very colorful billboard, the door to the monitor room opened and a certain voice piped up. Allow me to join you, Recovery Girl. Red Alert said as he entered, with none other than Shoto by his side. Right after I drop this one off. The bathroom hider reveals himself. Mina beamed. There you are. Finally decided to join us, EH. Not exactly by choice. The half-cold half-hot user muttered, just loud enough for the group to hear as Red and Recovery Girl went to the nurse's office. Koda probably would have dragged me here herself if she wasn't up next. Mina pouted and folded her arms across her chest. Wow, what's your problem, sassy pants? Shoto's response was, to look away from her and instead at Midoriya. Hey, I'm talking to you, ya know. Sorry, I just like being alone to think. Shoto answered bluntly before moving on, leaving Mina to huff turn away. Midoriya, I hear you wanted to see me. He continued. Izuku furrowed his brow, unsurprised by his demeanor. Ever since they became friends, he had noticed that Shoto Todoroki was a very standoffish individual. He never really liked to interact with people he wasn't wholly familiar with, so it was not shocking to see him blow off anyone else. At most, the only ones Shoto really interacted with at all were himself, Iida and Koda, even after learning about the Autobots. Though he did tend to gravitate toward Optimus from time to time, though Izuku was pretty sure he knew why. Prime despises his father's attitude, after all. Even so, he needed to get back on topic. Yeah, I wanted to talk strategy with you. Our practical against All Might isn't gonna be easy, after all. That's an understatement, Shoto agreed. You're going up against what is ostensibly an unstoppable force. Tenya added, approaching the duo. Though rather than countering it with an immovable object, the three of you are also practically unstoppable. Shoto eyed Iida with a curt nod. Yeah, only difference is that All Might is even more unstoppable than the three of us combined. There's a reason why we were pitted against him, after all. Izuku clenched a fist at his side. Our quirks are strong, for sure, but they're no match against him. He tightened his lips worriedly. I also have another idea as to why they set us up like this, because while you and I get along, Kacchan has it out for both of us for different reasons. Very good point. Momo said, placing a hand on her chin. With Midoriya, it's obvious why there's tension, but Todoroki. Ochako raised her brows at the realization, none of them really knew why Bakugo seemed to have it out for Shoto. Hey, yeah, what is Bakugo's problem with you? Not sure. Shoto shrugged. Never really thought to ask, and I doubt I'd get an answer. Hey, knowing him, ya probably wouldn't. Jiro commented. And you know Bakugo's gonna wanna fight All Might instead of run for the escape route. So what are you gonna do? Denki asked, leading the two boys to eye one another. Izuku bit his lip hesitantly, but in time, he came up with an answer. Though it wasn't exactly one that he was thrilled about. We're gonna have to talk to him, too. Deep underground within one of MECH's many temporary headquarters, Silas and his entourage made their way to the main control room, with several agents' eyes following them. Of course, this wasn't unexpected. After all, they had 5 giant robots with them. 2 was one thing, but with the extra company, it was bound to turn heads. And then, of course, came the mutters and whispers alongside the attention, Swindle and Skullcruncher are back. Yeah, but who are the new bots? Probably the cons that brought him back to their ship. Then that means, that's Starscream. Thundercracker and Skywarp looked around to the astonished humans, not used to all of the attention. Pretty sure this is the first time a bunch of humans haven't either run away or tried to fight us, the latter commented. Kinda, Thundercracker said while mentally adding, but not really. He thought back to the one non-confrontational interaction he'd ever had with a human, her kindness still resonating with him even now. Doubt she even remembers that, though. The Blue Seeker thought. Her kidnapping probably overshadows all of that. You bots might wanna get used to that. Professor Sutton said, the teenage prodigy turning on her heel to walk backwards while looking up at the Decepticons. If this alliance goes well, you're probably gonna be working with us for a good while. Starscream hummed and replied, let us hope that is the case, child. That made Penelope narrow her eyes. Don't push it, dude. I'm 16, but I've got a mental capacity that puts most adults to shame. Interesting. Starscream said, only half focused on the conversation. His optics focused in on Silas instead. So, this, Mr. Black, he is an eccentric one, I take it. For the most part, yes. Silas affirmed. But he is also one of the most brilliant minds this side of the hemisphere. He's the one who created the technology that the SUV use in their operations. Penelope cleared her throat and Silas promptly corrected himself. For the most part. Colossus Rhodes picked it up from there. Mr. Black specializes in biotechnology, meaning that he creates tech that enhances human beings on the molecular level. To demonstrate, he activated his back-mounted enhancements and buffed up to his muscular form right then and there, becoming a behemoth of a man right in front of them. Gah, such as he's done to me. The Seekers were all left with wide optics at the transformation. Whoa, that is insane, Thundercracker exclaimed. Though, wait, why would you need these enhancements? Doesn't your race have natural superpowers already? Only 80% of the population have quirks. Nanosec grumbled bitterly, with the rest of the SUV also grimacing with him. And those people like to lord that fact over quirkless guys like us. And the most pompous out of all of them are those so-called heroes. Angry Archer added with massive air quotes. The supposed protectors of this world who act more like luminaries than actual bringers of justice. Starscream pursed his lips upon hearing this. Yes, I've seen that many heroes tend to have a certain pomp and circumstance to them. His focus shifted back to Silas. And I can only guess that your aim in this new world order of yours is to surpass those with quirks with grand technological advancement. Correct. Silas nodded. The heroes and quirked masses of this world have sat on their pedestals for far too long. He clenched his fist, furthering, and we intend to knock them down by getting this world back on track with technology. Just then, one of the MECH agents approached and saluted him. Sir, we still have Mr. Black on hold. He's eager to speak with you. Silas grumbled slightly, but went to the main control terminal to answer the call. I'm sure he has. Swindle, Skullcruncher, it'd probably be best for the two of you to explain what's going on to him. The criminal duo were hesitant at first, but ultimately knew that there wasn't much arguing against Silas. Not unless they wanted to cause a scene. Yeah, I guess you're right. Swindle accepted, with him and his Predacon mentor stepping within the screen's sights. With that, Silas pressed the call button, putting Mr. Black's through once again. Upon the screen appeared a large letter, B, inside of a hexagon, no doubt the mysterious man's signature symbol. There you are, Silas. Mr. Blake spoke, his voice laced with an accent that none of the Decepticons could place. I was beginning to wonder if something had happened. Wait, Swindle. Skullcruncher. Is that you I see back there? He can see them. Thundercracker whispered, leaning down to Professor Sutton. Yeah, he's got a cam on his end. Penelope confirmed. He just doesn't want to risk his own identity getting exposed to the wrong people. He's got his hands in legal and illegal stuff. Skywarp nodded in understanding. I see. And if his unlawful practices are exposed, he'll be ruined. Treading on thin ice, by the sounds of it. Swindle, meanwhile, was putting on his best businessman smile for the benefactor. Hey, Mr. Black. Been a while since we last talked. How've ya been? Deflecting the subject, I see. Mr. Black stated, making Swindle wince. Don't think I haven't heard what happened to you recently. How are you even there? Did you escape your former comrades? The question made Starscream glower at the Combaticon, who hastily denied the claim. Well, you see, that's actually a funny story. We've brought them here to form a more powerful alliance. Skullcruncher said bluntly, taking Swindle off guard. It's a better alternative than being locked up in the brig fair abandoning the cause, ya know. The answer made Starscream deadpan. Granted, it was the truth, but he never expected the Predacon to be so upfront about it. Still, it seemed to make Mr. Black intrigued. Is that so? Interesting, are they here right now? Swindle abdicated and bowed his head, gesturing towards Starscream as he stepped aside. Why yes, they are. Mr. Black, allow me to introduce you to the Decepticons' esteemed second-in-command and unrivaled commander of the Seeker Armada, Starscream. The presentation was so good that Starscream ignored the amount of sarcasm in Swindle's voice, instead stepping into the screen's field of view to introduce himself. Mr. Black, I presume. The Seeker greeted. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. From the speaker, an fascinated hum came from the man. Well, aren't you just a tall, flying death machine? Well, any ally of Swindle's is a welcome ally of mine. He's already shared many technological marvels with our little group here. From his point of view, Mr. Black could see Silas scowling, which he had to hide his pleasure in seeing. I'm assuming that you can offer much of the same, Mr. Scream. Formalities are unneeded, Mr. Black. Starscream waved off. But yes, the Decepticons are willing to offer MHA further advances in technology, in exchange for certain favors, of course. Well, of course. Recompense is no stranger to one such as myself, Mr. Black assured. But what kind of favors are we talking here? Namely, aid in dismantling our enemies, the Autobots, along with their many heroic allies. On the other end, Mr. Black nodded in understanding. Ah, yes, the ones who caused us so much trouble in retrieving the DNGS a month or so back. Him uttering the name garnered a few chortles from his followers, but he ultimately ignored them. I can understand why you would be so frustrated with them. They seem to be a well-coordinated unit, especially when working with superheroes. And luckily for you, our goals seem to align in some way. Starscream's smile widened at the prospect. Indeed, I take it that you're not a fan of heroes either. Quirkless yourself, perhaps. Oh ho ho, no, I do have a quirk. Though sadly it is one that is so insignificant that it barely constitutes as one. Mr. Black's tone was audibly bitter as he spoke about his power. I have the ability to secret corrosive sludge from my fingertips. The cons all looked to one another in perplexedly. That actually sounds pretty useful, Skywarp said in confusion. And it would be, if I wasn't limited to only about a pint a day. I have never been able to exceed that limit, so any use it would have been is completely null and void. There was a brief pause before they heard a clap come from Mr. Black's end, smacking his hands together while shifting the subject of conversation. But, with any luck, my biotech research should prove fruitful in my endeavor to enhance the quirks of those who aren't fortunate enough to have flashy powers and make them flashy. Which is why I called in the first place. This left Starscream and the other Decepticons surprised. Really? The lead seeker glanced down to Silas. And you're alright with this? Silas gave a short sigh, placing his hands on his hips. As much as it pains me to say it, yes, I am. Black's goals and mine might not align exactly, but the end result is the same, to improve the world through technology. Whether it be through biotech or mechanical enhancements, we will bring about change in some way. His attention went back to his benefactor on call. Which leads me to ask, what did you want to talk about, Mr. Black? Well, I bring good news, Silas. The final stage of my prototype formula is ready to be tested, and I have several men lined up that would happily volunteer for the job. Mr. Black explained before the screen changed, showing a map of Lake Michigan, a red dot indicating a remote island off the coast of Detroit. I would like for you and I to meet at the usual spot so that I can show you the progress that I've made. What do you say? Interested? The MECH leader narrowed his eyes. So long as it doesn't end the way your last prototype did, then yes. Oh, I can assure you, Silas, this will be quite different than the previous, mishap. Mr. Black promised before inviting the Seeker Commander. Oh, and you are more than welcome to come as well, Starscream. I'm certain that you and the Decepticons would find this very useful in your endeavors. Starscream had to admit, his interest was piqued. When would this meeting take place? In 2 weeks. I run on a very tight schedule, so I apologize if there is any inconveniences. But the second in command shook his head. Oh, no, it isn't inconvenient at all. A wicked smirk appeared upon his features. In fact, I believe that there will be even more people of interest arriving in that time frame. Consider it a deal, good sir. Kyoka let out a sigh of relief as she opened her eyes. The ringing in her ears had finally stopped, along with the bleeding. It had taken a lot of strength to get up and run to the finish line after President Mike's attacks, but she had insisted to Koda that helping Jiro out was the main priority. She could deal with some bleeding ears, but the tailed boy would never escape with only one leg. But thankfully, they had all made it to Recovery Girl's temporary office, where she and Red Alert, or Dr. Randall, rather, were treating them. Finally, the punk rocker sighed as she sat up. I can hear myself think again. You're quite lucky to have only suffered some bleeding. Recovery Girl noted. President Mike's known to have left plenty of people completely deaf. Dr. Randall huffed at that as he finished splinting Jiro's leg. Well, if he had done that, you know what would have happened, right? The elderly nurse nodded. Oh, certainly. Would have smacked him on the back of the head while making sure this young lady got better treatment. Seems a bit more lenient than I was thinking. Kyoko rolled her eyes and got up out of bed. PSH, whatever. But you know, as much as Present Mike's voice hurts, he may have given me an idea for a new piece of support gear. She craned her head toward the doctor. I'm gonna have to see May later once this is over. HM, and I'm sure she'd be more than willing to help out. On that note, Randall finished up on Ojiro's leg, giving him a pat on the shoulder. Ah, but there you go, young man. Between Recovery Girl's quirk and this splint, you should be back on your feet by the end of the day. Thank you very much, Doctor. Ojiro bowed his head in respect before he and Kyoko looked to the opposite end of the room, where Koda sat with a sheepish smile. And Koda, thank you. Koda's eyes widened a little, only to then shrink away bashfully. With a bright smile, Kyoko went over and raised her hand to him. Dude, come on, you really pulled through for the team out there. Without you, we would have been sunk. He managed to return eye contact with her as she gave him a supportive nod. Your hero material, Koda, and don't let anybody tell you different. Eventually, Koda managed to smile as well and he reciprocated her high five, to which Kyoko pointed at him. There ya go. Also, don't be afraid to speak up from time to time. A certain friend of mine will tell you that making your voice heard is key to being a good hero. The Rocky boy hesitated for a moment, but managed to get out a few words. I'll try. Thank you, Jiro, for believing in me. Recovery Girl cleared her throat, garnering their attention. Speaking of said boy, she pointed her needlekin toward the other entrance to her office, the one that she had come through. He and the other members of your little friend group are in there waiting for you. Don't want to keep them waiting for much longer, do you? Oh, they are. Kyoko turned to head toward the door, but then she stopped, spinning back around when she realized that she wasn't about to invite the others. Oh, sorry, do you guys wanna come with? I think we can watch the rest of the tests in there. But Ojiro gave her a wave, showing that it was okay. Nah, you go on ahead. I think I'm just gonna rest here a bit. Koda also sent her a reassuring nod, waving as well. Besides, I think we're gonna wait it out until the last test comes around. Because, hoo boy, that's gonna be something to see. The last test, it wasn't a surprise to Kyoko in the least, considering who were up last. Izuku, Todoroki and Bakugo, versus All Might. Dear God, there won't be anything left. Even so, she smiled to the duo and laughed it off. Hee, yeah, I can see why. I'll see you guys then, I guess. Bidding the two farewell, she followed Recovery Girl and Dr. Randall to the door that led to the monitor room, where she was met with a thunderous applause right off the bat. Wah! Woo! There she is, Jazz announced as everyone else cheered for her arrival. He approached his human partner and raised his hand. Glad to see you're still kickin', girl. Up top. Huh, holy crap, guys. The Perplet reciprocated the gesture as she looked out at her friends. What the hell? Was all this really necessary? I honestly didn't do much during that test. From the crowd, Izuku made his way forward, offering evidence to the contrary. Maybe not in terms of combat, but Kyoko, you're the reason why Koda was able to make such a great comeback. He held his hand up to her with an encouraging grin. You helped motivate him to that off. You should be really proud of yourself. A slight blush appeared on Kyoko's cheeks, but she quickly got a hold of herself and clasped her hand with Izuku's. Thanks. I owe a lot to that guy. Out the corner of her eye, Kyoko then spotted a certain red and white-haired boy, whose attention was still intently on the large screen. With a sly grin, she waltzed over, leaned in and said, Yo, bathroom boy, how were the stalls? She got the exact reaction she was hoping for, subtle horror. How did you? Koda. Why am I not surprised? Shoto rubbed his temples, thoroughly annoyed. Once all of our tests are over, I'm just gonna hide somewhere. Kyoko's grin widened at that. Preferably not the bathrooms, right? The sight of Shoto's eyes slightly twitching gave her life, and it was obvious that everyone else did too since they all quietly chuckled. Relax, Todoroki, we're not making fun of you or anything. It feels like you are. We're not, trust me. Even Koda was laughing about it earlier. That managed to take Shoto by surprise, his eyes shifting back to her. This is just what having a group of friends is like, ya know. We have fun. Her response was a quiet hum from the boy as his attention went back to the monitor, which made her look up toward the screen as well. It was only then did she realize that the next test was already underway. "Oh, guess I missed the start of this one, huh?" "Yes, but you haven't missed much," Momo elaborated. "It started only 5 minutes ago, though so far, Hagakure, Shinso and Shoji haven't had much luck." On the screen, the three aforementioned students were in the middle of a giant parking lot building with massive pillars holding the structure up. And, at the moment, they were hiding behind one of these concrete supports, keeping out of sight from Snipe. "How has this not ended already, though?" Kyoka questioned. "With Shinso's power, it should be a piece of cake." "Well, that's the thing," Bulkhead pointed at Snipe. "He hasn't said a word since the test started. And Shinso's been doing nothing but trying to goad him into talking." "How can you tell?" Mina asked. "His whole face is covered. When you work with troops that constantly keep their mouths covered by faceplates, you know when they're talking." Bulkhead furthered, narrowing his eyes at the screen. "And Snipe, he hasn't let out a single peep. In the parking building itself, things weren't looking too good for the young heroes as they kept as still as they could behind their hiding place. Ever since they started, Snipe had been a silent attacker, in everything but the shots from his gun. He too was behind cover, but even so, neither Toru, Shoji or Shinso could get a beat on him thanks to his seemingly perfect quick-draw technique. And by that point, the invisible girl was starting to get frustrated. "Guys, at this rate, we'll be trapped forever," she exclaimed, waving her gloved hands around. Mezzo Shoji was remaining on lookout, though, keeping a cool head despite the circumstances. He used his dupli arms to create an extra-large eye and a secondary mouth for surveillance purposes. "Don't worry, he's only one man," Shoji said with his main mouth before switching to the second one, which had an audibly higher pitch. "Still, escaping this will be a Herculean task. Our only advantage is our opponent is slowed by those weights." "Yeah, because otherwise, he's got us outmatched," Shinso grumbled, his own irritation growing by the second. "If only I could get him to say something, then maybe." *PSSSSSSTTT. The purple-haired boy was taken off guard when, all of a sudden, a green can was thrown into the center of the lot and unleashed a huge cloud of smoke, which began obscuring everything around them. "Smoke bomb," Shoji said, narrowing his eyes to try and see their opponent through the haze. "He's trying to blind us. Though at least it's going to affect his V-zone at the same time." Bang ba bang. His assumption proved false as several bullets cracked through their pillar hiding place, causing it to start crumbling. "Scratch that. Run." Shoji wasn't about to argue with Shinso as they sprinted away, quickly taking cover behind a different pillar. "Ha, are you alright, Hagakure?" Shoji asked, assuming his classmate followed. Hagakure. He spun around and, where they had once hidden, the only trace of the invisible girl left were her boots and gloves. It didn't take long for Hitoshi to notice as well, and by then, Shoji had gotten an idea. "So that's it, Shinso, I've got a plan." "You do?" Shinso raised a brow. "I'm all ears. How good are you at impressions?" As the duo formulated their plan, Snipe slowly kept approaching through the fog, his sidearm still at the ready for anything. "This is all too easy," he thought to himself. "Time to wrap this, It was then, however, that he saw a large figure sprinting toward him through the smoke, with 6 large tentacles spread out and ready to attack. "Not so fast, kid." In rapid succession, Snipe unleashed a volley of shots toward the ground, making a line that made Shoji come to a halt. The smoke began to lift and the dupli arms user raised his appendages, all while shouting. "Are you crazy? You could have hit me." Snipe smirked, knowing that wasn't the case. "Relax, kid, that was just and then, just like that, his mind went blank, his arms falling limp at his sides, right as Hagakure came in to slap them over his wrists. "Ha ha. Victory!" Toru exclaimed. Beneath his mask, Shoji smirked. "The plan worked. Gotcha. Nice work, both of you. You're just lucky we sound pretty similar already." Shinso commented as he emerged from the lifting fog. "Hagakure, good idea getting ahead of us like that." "Ah, it's no biggie." Toru shrugged. "But how'd you finally get Snipe to say something?" Shoji pointed at his masked face. "We tricked him into thinking that I had said something, when really, it was Shinso doing an impression of me." They could hear Toru applauding the idea. "Ooh, nice. Oh, hey, you know Shinso, if you ever do become a hero, maybe you should get a voice modulator or something, to make yourself sound like other people and trick bad guys. Hitoshi blinked, surprised by the suggestion, but not opposed to it. Huh, you know, that's actually not a bad idea. I'll keep that in mind. He turned his attention to Snipe and released him from his quirk. You're free. The test is over. Huh. Snipe whipped his head around in confusion, and then looked down to see that he was cuffed. Gah, dignabbit. Team Hagakure, Shinso and Shoji have passed the exam. Upon hearing the announcement, those in the monitor room were overjoyed by the result. Yes, just as I expected. Momo beamed happily. When it comes to stealth ops, no one in class is better than Hagakure. Yeah, plus Shoji and Shinso's plan to trick Mr. Snipe with ventriloquism was great, too. Izuku pumped his fist, seeing the latter smiling with the other students on the screen. If this doesn't convince Principal Nezu and Mr. Aizawa that he belongs in the hero course, then nothing will. Just then, the sound of the door opening drew everyone's focus behind them, where none other than Bumblebee's holoform came striding in. Oh, hey B. Well, it would seem that the gang is all here. Recovery Girl commented, looking around at the giant group of students and their Autobot partners. Sideswipe gave a shrug. Well, everyone but Prime, that is. Anyone seen him? Sunstreaker scratched his chin thoughtfully. I'm pretty sure I saw him talking with All Might a little while ago, though I've got no idea where he is now. Izuku mulled over that in his head, finding it strange. Why would Prime not be here? I'm guessing if he's with All Might, then he's with the other teachers, which by proxy means that they've got their own observation room. Still, it's really weird that he wouldn't just join. Shink. Yeah. Kyoka had jabbed one of her jacks into Izuku's arm, bringing him out of his trance. Green Bean, you're muttering again. Sorry. Izuku apologized, bowing his head profusely. I really have no clue how that happens. His apology was suddenly halted when Bumblebee came up and clasped a hand on his shoulder, sending him a reassuring grin and a thumbs up. Yeah, guess you're right. I am getting better at keeping it in check. He then saw B jab his thumb over his shoulder, which Izuku took to mean that he should get going. Oh, yeah, you're right, he looked to Shoto with a serious gaze. Todoroki, our test is up after this one. Shoto gave a curt nod. Yeah, but we'll have time to make it. His sights went straight back to the monitor. Kata's test is up, and I'd rather not miss it. Yeah, exactly my thought. Izuku agreed. Momo couldn't help but raise a brow. Are you sure? I thought that the two of you wanted to talk strategy with Bakugo. The Greenette gave a shrug. Well, yeah, we do, but I want to make sure I see everyone else fight. It's super interesting to see how each team uses their quirks. He raised a confident fist. And I also feel like I'm getting stronger just watching them. All of our classmates are so amazing. I have faith that all of us can pass this final. Despite Izuku's motivational speech, though, Jiro and Denki were much less confident. Ya might wanna put a pin in that, the spiky redhead said with a meek smile. Yeah, seems like one of our dudes might have checked out. Denki pointed up to the screen, where a sleeping Hantashiro was resting his head on the thighs of Midnight, like they were a pillow. Immediately, Bumblebee recognized the look on the R-rated hero's face. She was out for blood, and she would get it no matter what she had to do. And all the while, Kata and Sato were running for their lives. They dead. Kata couldn't understand this. Their plan had been so simple, and yet it crumbled to dust practically a minute in. They were going to surprise Midnight and restrain her before she could even use her quirk, with Zero's tape being a key factor in the plan. But then the somnambulist user had gotten the drop on them right as they had reached the escape gate, resulting in Kata getting flung away from Zero's tape while he shouted, Sato! Get her outta here! Gia! Before she could protest, she landed on the Sugar Rush user's back as he sprinted off, leaving Zero to his fate. Hey! Wait a second. But it was too late. Zero felt his helmet get grabbed on each side, causing it to open and allow Midnight's mist to seep into his lungs, making him fall asleep immediately. She allowed him to fall gently into her lap, caressing her hand through his hair all the while. Yes, that's right. Have a nice nap, she soothed as her gaze locked onto the retreating duo. What's the matter, kids? Plan falling apart at the seams. Damn you, you vile mistress. Koda shook her fist in retribution. We'll be back. Midnight could only lick her lips with a sultry hum. I'm looking forward to it. Once Sato was sure that they were a fair distance into the rocky terrain that was their test course, he set Koda down to catch his breath. Well, plan A failed, he concluded. So, I'm open to a backup plan if you got one. We didn't have any backup plans. Koda gripped her hair, panic starting to settle in. Jiro was our best chance at restraining her and now, he's taking a nappy poo. Hey, Jiro specifically told me to get you out of there while he sacrificed himself because he knew that you had a better chance at making a plan to get us all out of here. Sato reasoned, giving her a serious look. I know that the situation's stressful, but I'm sure we can find a way out of it if we put our heads together. Koda pursed her lips, placing a finger on her chin while racking her brain. What could they do? When it came to Midnight, she knew only two things about her power. It put people to sleep and it worked on boys better than girls. And then there was her signature whip weapon, which she was a master at. She's got plenty of things that we can go after, but we'd need to get close, which isn't an option. Koda muttered to herself. We'd need to get past that sleep mist first, but, she trailed off as she noticed something hanging from her body, and it was then that an idea came to her. Wait, maybe that could work. Sato was confused as she reached down and began unraveling the tape that was stuck to her torso. What are you talking about? Holding the tape up to him, Koda said, Jiro's tape was supposed to be what got us the victory. Maybe it still can. Crack. Gah. The duo gasped and whirled around, seeing an approaching figure veiled in pink mist. I thought I'd stay posted at the escape gate until time ran out, Midnight said as her form became more visible, tugging at her whip with both hands. But on second thought, I have a deeper itch that needs to be scratched. If I see someone running away from me and screaming, her expression took on a twisted grin, gazing hungrily at the duo as she licked her lips. My sadistic side aches so back that I can't sit still. Koda and Sato were trembling at this point, afraid of what their teacher might do to them. Shish, she's like a predator who's cornered her prey. The latter screamed. Phrasing, Koda shouted. With every click of her heels against the rocky surface, Midnight slowly but surely approached the two, almost like a serial killer in a movie. Give in, you know it's over. One tiny breath and you'll both submit to me. Her eyes widened in excitement at the prospect. Then I'll have absolute control of you. In a split second, Koda brought out a Brachiosaurus tail from her rear to wrap around Sato and run away with him. Move. And keep your face covered. But of course, this only excited Midnight more. Oh perfect. I do love the chase. She saw the duo bound behind a particularly large boulder, which she didn't particularly think was a good hiding spot. Come now, surely you don't expect to evade my scent like that. How long do you suppose you can keep your mouths and noses shut, You think we don't have a plan? Koda called back, right as the boulder began to rise up from the ground. We just had to put some distance between us and you. As it turned out, Sato was the one lifting the boulder above his head, having down 2 packs of sugar to increase his power, before then slapping a bunch of tape over his mouth and nose. Shori, Mish Midnight, he muffled before throwing the whole boulder at her. Aha! With a great leap, Midnight not only dodged the boulder, but actually rebounded off of it to launch herself toward the duo. You think you can win that easily? As she came in, she ripped off more of the thin fabric covering her arms, unleashing more of her somnambulist mist. Here, just try and resist this. However, the pink haze wouldn't end up reaching the students. Now, Koda, Sato hollered. Pterodactyl wings. From behind Sato, a pair of large, membraned wings emerged and began flapping, kicking up a powerful gust of wind that sent the pink mist whipping away and knocked Midnight out of the air. The R-rated hero managed to stick the landing, though, and she snapped her whip out toward Koda, only for it to be intercepted by Sato's arm. Midnight gave a gasp and nearly fell forward when the whip was yanked out of her hands. She tried to unleash more of her sleep mist, but the winds from Koda's wings were still far too powerful. Cornered, I see. But even so, you shouldn't assume I'm defenseless. With a skip and jump, she went to kick Sato straight in the chest, only to be surprised when Koda flew over his head with cuffs in hand. And you shouldn't assume that we're not gonna let you do anything. Swooping straight down, Koda slapped the cuffs over one of Midnight's wrists, effectively landing them the win. Team Kiryu, Sato and Jiro have passed the exam. Midnight blinked as the reality sunk in for her, leading her to lift up her mask and smile at the duo. "Huh, very impressive you two. Definitely wasn't expecting that. Congratulations." Koda and Sato both smiled wide and high-fived. "Haha. Hell yeah, we did it, Sato. We sure did." Sato pulled the tape off his face. "Though we owe Jiro one, too. Without this, we might have been sunk." "Ah, yes." Midnight craned her head back toward the escape gate, where she had left Jiro asleep. "He may get points docked for getting himself captured, but I'm sure that he'll be fine, maybe." She turned her attention back to the larger student. "Sato, would you be a dear and collect him for us?" The yellow-costumed hero in training gave a salute. "Sure thing, Miss Midnight." With that, Sato ran back to the escape gate and gathered Jiro, lugging him over his shoulder as the two ladies strolled behind him. Midnight took the opportunity to lean in and whisper, "By the way, Koda, I think you'll be happy to know that the other Autobots have been watching everyone this entire time." Wait, really? Koda did a double take, not expecting that news. "Yep, we allowed Red Alert to tap into the security footage and post it as a live feedback to Autobot HQ. Midnight winked. "So I'm sure that a certain someone is going to be quite proud of your performance today. I believe his name is Grimlock, correct?" Koda smiled from ear to ear and nodded to her. She was already overjoyed over her victory, but knowing that Grimlock had seen it, it made her even happier. Yeah, that's him." She took a deep breath as their group made their way back to the main building, content with her performance. But even so, she knew that there was still one match to go, and there was no way she was going to miss watching that one. "Midoriya, Shoto, good luck." Her features soured when she remembered who else was in that group. "And Bakugo, I swear, if you drag those two down, you will never hear the end of it from me." Chapter 85. One shall pass, one shall fail. Autobot Outpost Omega-1. The entire base was abuzz with excitement over what had transpired over the last several hours. Gathered at the main computer terminal stood every remaining Autobot who couldn't go to UA. High to see the tests, though thankfully, they weren't left out entirely. Red Alert had cleverly found a way to beam a live feed of the practical exams back to HQ in real time, allowing them all to see their human friends make significant progress through their trials one after the other. And, to the jubilation of them all, each group had so far passed the tests, leaving only two of their friends left to go. "Haha, wow, can you believe these kids?" Jetfire jerked a thumb toward the monitor as the perspective switched to the final testing ground. "They're working their way through this like it's a cakewalk." "Well, what did you expect?" Springer shrugged with a bit of a cocky grin. "Most of them were trained by us, after all." Erazar shot the triple changer a narrow-eyed look. "Is that so? Because last I checked, they were trained by the ones who are actually at the school." "Yeah, Springer, I wouldn't go patting yourself on the back like that." Flare upset as she wagged her finger at him. "Ah, alright. Fair. Springer raised his hands, abdicating to the femmes. "Still, ya gotta admit, those kids getting into so many battles with the cons has toughened them up real good." His optics shifted over to Grimlock, who was standing silently as he stared at the monitor. "Sup with the silent treatment, big guy. Something on your processor." That managed to get Grimlock's attention, to which signal Flare piped up. "Yeah, you were making quite the ruckus before when Koda won, Grimlock." "Something the matter?" "Oh, haha, no, nothing." The Dinobot leader shook his head, his gaze moving back to the screen. "It's just, I can't help but feel that this last test coming up is going to be much different than the others." Down below, the Autobot mini-cons had all gathered to watch the proceedings as well, with Roller speaking to Grimlock's point. "Well, of course it is. It's gonna be Izuku, Shoto and that Bakugo kid going against All Might. It's bound to be a lot more intense than the last tests." "I don't doubt that," Grimlock assured. "It's just, something else seems off. I noticed that Prime seemed a bit unsure of something before he left, and when I asked, he said that he had a big decision to make in regards to the tests." He peered down to Roller inquisitively. Though he didn't exactly elaborate on that. "Any ideas as to what that could be?" Not a clue," Roller admitted. Which is weird, because he usually tells me these things if they're that important. Hold on a nanoclick, Highwire said, a thought occurring to him. You don't think that Prime would actually get involved in Izuku's test, do you? The rest of the Autobots, including his own team, looked at him incredulously. Dude, are you serious? Grinder rebuked. Prime, doing something like that? I doubt it. Yes, I must agree. Sir Shock nodded. It would be far too big of a risk, especially if other humans were to witness the tests like we are. Highwire shrugged. Maybe, but Prime's come up with convincing cover stories before, so who knows? Maybe now wouldn't be so different. The mini-con's point gave everybody pause, but eventually, he too shook his head. But what do I know? No matter what Prime does, he pretty much always knows what he's doing. Grimlock gave a sigh and peered back to the screen. Well, that comes with having the wisdom of a Prime, I suppose. Still, considering that Optimus mentored the boy and this is his test, I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to help All Might put Izuku through his paces. He crossed his arms over his chest expectantly. We shall see. As Izuku dashed toward the exam course with Shoto by his side, he couldn't help but feel his stomach being tied in knots. Of course, there was the extant fear of them actually failing this test, which was a definite possibility. After all, even if they could all get on the same page, All Might was still All Might. The number one hero, even in a handicapped state, was not to be taken lightly. But even still, the fact remained that if they stood even the slightest chance of winning, they'd have to convince a certain Ashen Blonde to work together as a team, which would not be easy. And just as soon as he thought that, the entrance to the course came into view, along with their third-party member. Bakugo, hearing their approach, peered over his shoulder with his trademark scowl. TCH, about time, he grumbled. And where the hell were you? Watching Koda's team win, Izuku said with a happy smile. Meaning that if we win, our entire class will have passed. HMPH, leave it to lizard lips to not disappoint. Bakugo shrugged off. Okay then, let's get this over with. Just make sure you two stay the hell out of my way. Todoroki furrowed his brow and went to intercept the explosion user before he could step through the doorway. Now hold on, shouldn't we at least try to formulate a plan before we take on this challenge? Have you forgotten who we're facing? A sneer appeared on Katsuki's lips as he rounded on the half-and-half quirk user. Don't you try to lecture me, icy hot. I know All Might won't be a cakewalk, and that's exactly what I'm hopping for. He clenched his fist and raised it to Shoto's chin. This is exactly what we're here for, don't ya see? If we wanna pass, then we're gonna have to eat some tough shit. He pointed his finger between the duo. And I ain't about to let either of you beat me like at the sports festival. Ya hear me? Upon hearing that, Izuku's expression hardened. Of course. That's what this was about. Are you really still on that? He heard Bakugo give a, huh. Before going on, are you seriously still obsessing over your loss at the sports festival? Of course I am, Katsuki said, confronting Izuku directly now. You beat me, and that shouldn't have happened. I can't believe this, Izuku uttered, suddenly feeling quite hollow. And here I thought you'd have actually learned something from your defeat. I did learn something, Deku. Bakugo pointed directly at the face of his former childhood friend. It's that if I wanna make sure I stay on top, then I'm gonna have to work my ass off to outdo you. Izuku's glare deepened even further. This isn't a competition, Kachan. This is a test. And the fact that you're treating it like it's a competition is shameful to the school. The Ashen Blonde simply scoffed and turned away. TCH, you still don't get it. If we wanna stay in this class, then we're gonna have to treat it like it's a competition. You heard the teachers, if that brainwashing guy does well, then he'll be transferred up. And that means one of us will be at risk to transfer out. Shoto concluded. See, at least Icy Hot understands. However, Shoto wasn't done. Still, that doesn't give you the right to belittle him like that. He moved in front of Katsuki with his head raised. I might not have known Midoriya for a long time, but he's told me everything there is to know about the history between you two. And from the sounds of it, your beef with him sounds pretty one-sided. That made Bakugo send a sideways glare toward Izuku, though what he was faced with wasn't fear, but unwavering bravery. Wasn't enough for you to tell the teachers, huh? Ya had to tell him, too. Oh, I told more than just him. Izuku assured. See, that's the thing about having a big group of friends instead of a bunch of toadies that follow you. You get to confide your problems with them, and believe it or not, that's how I've gotten more confident recently. TCH, pisses me off. Before the conflict could continue, the doors to the test grounds opened, leading into a rather desolate downtown area. If the three hadn't known better, they would have guessed that this place should have been populated. But to the contrary, this was made exclusively to be a training course for young, aspiring heroes. Which included the three of them. Bakugo proceeded in with single-minded focus, not even bothering to look back at the two. Just stay out of my way. Izuku and Shoto eyed one another, both of them trying to keep their cool in this situation. Of course, they knew that this wouldn't be easy, dealing with Bakugo and such. Still, if they had any chance at passing this exam, they had to somehow convince the Ashen Blonde to work together as a team. So with that, they followed him, and as soon as they were all in, the doors closed behind them. Then, they heard the words that sealed their fate. Team Bakugo, Midoriya and Todoroki. Practical exam. Ready, go. Bakugo went to keep going, but Izuku and Shoto kept pace, the former stepped in front of him. What the hell did I just say? Kachan, just listen for a second. Izuku implored. I know that we may not like each other for the most part, but right now, we're a team. If we're gonna get through this test, then communication will be key. His words earned a baneful stare from the explosion user, but he kept speaking nonetheless. For this exam, the teacher's the villain and we're the heroes, so we'll need a plan. Exactly. Shoto urged as well, only fueling Bakugo's anger. Under normal circumstances, the best play would be to analyze the villain's combat ability and choosing to either fight or run based on that, but since this is All Might we're talking about. Izuku nodded without question. Right, we shouldn't have to think about it. Combat is out of the question. He placed a ponderous finger upon his chin. It'd be impossible to beat him in a fight, so we'll have to. You cannot be serious. Katsuki bit back in retaliation. I am. Izuku insisted, putting his foot down. All Might will probably be waiting for us on this very street, so we should take another route. But Katsuki swiped his arm, cutting the greenette off. I'm not running away from this fight. It'll look better if we blast that smile off his face. At that point, Izuku's own frustration was beginning to boil over. No, we should avoid fighting him no matter what. I'm gonna toy with him until time is almost up and then KO him for real. Jerking a thumb to his chest, Katsuki declared, and there ain't nothing holding me back. Not you, not Icy Hot, not anyone. You hear me, Deku. But the One for All inheritor wasn't going to back down as easily as his former friend thought. Why is it that you always have to make things more difficult? Not just for me, but for yourself, too. Don't you understand? Even with those handicap weights, it'll be impossible to win in a fight against all MI. Without any warning, Bakugo went to throw a swift punch right at Izuku's head, only for his fist to be intercepted by Shoto. That's enough. The half-and-half quirk user snapped as he shoved the fist back. Grr. A venomous growl escaped Katsuki's throat as he glared daggers through Izuku's soul. Just shut up. Just because you're getting stronger doesn't mean you get to tell me what to do. All I'm trying to do is get us to pass the final. Izuku placed a hand on his chest. This is for all of us, Kachan. Bakugo leaned in, stoking the rage between them even more. I told you we don't need your dumb power to pass. I can win it all by myself. And it was then that Izuku tipped over the edge. He was well past his anger point, and it had spiked. Would you stop being so self-absorbed and see reason for once in your damn life? Before the argument could go on, however, all at once, they felt a huge gust of wind nearly blow all of them off their feet. The trio shouted out in surprise, and then, in the next instant, the number one hero stood before them with his fists planted firmly on his hips. All Might was here. Hello, boys. He greeted, his blue eyes shimmering as he dropped a new bombshell on them. Ready to hear the new rules. Back in the monitor room, everyone watched intently and with bated breath as the three boys were confronted with All Might right off the bat. Obviously, they were all taken aback by the hero's sudden arrival, not even giving them any time to prepare for him. But something seemed odd. Instead of attacking them, All Might seemed like he was speaking to them for some reason. Anyone else confused? Kyoka asked. Yes, I'm not sure what's happening either. Momo said, furrowing her brow at the proceedings as All Might raised a hand. Something unusual is going on. Before she could continue her thought, however, the door behind them opened once again, prompting everyone to turn around. And there, they were met with an astonishing sight. Koda had arrived, and she brought everyone. Standing behind her were Tsuyu, Tokiyami, Shinso, Shoji, Toru, Koda, Sato, Ojiro, who was using crutches, and Shiro, who had just woken up from his little nap. Yo, guys. The Soro Parts user greeted as they all stepped into the room. We didn't miss any of the action, right? Jazz immediately recognized the situation and whispered to his comrades, human names up, bots. He received a collective nod from the disguised Autobots before answering her. No, y'all are just in time. Jeff nudged his head up toward the screen. Things are just getting started, kinda. Whoa, look at that. Ojiro pointed out. All Might's already there. Toru exclaimed as well. And he's talking to them. Tenya pursed his lips in uncertainty. Yes, we're honestly just as confused as you all. We have no idea what's happening down there. Sue placed an inquisitive finger on her chin. You think this is some sort of tactic? Something to take them off guard? Kyoka furrowed her brows at the proceedings. No idea, but I'm pretty sure something is about to happen, and she was sure that something would probably make this test much different than the ones that they had all taken. Don't tell me, is this special treatment for these three? She thought frustratedly. Izuku, be careful. You're no doubt wondering what I'm referring to. All Might continued, his trademark smile ever present. You're damn right we are. Bakugo shouted. The hell do ya mean, new rules? Shoto clenched his fists, with one igniting into flame while ice began to gather around his foot. Don't listen to anything he says. It's got to be a trick to let our guard down. However, All Might shook his finger. Not so, young Todoroki. Normally, yes, a villain would attempt to take advantage of this moment to take the heroes off their game, but I am only being honest with you here. He spread his arms out toward the three. Because, you see, I've realized that the three of you combined are simply too much for me to handle. Your quirks are all incredible in their own right, and I have no chance against all three of you by myself. GRK. All of a sudden, the hero jerked his arm down, suddenly reminded of the weights. Gah, especially with these things on, geez. Don't tell me, you're giving up. Izuku said incredulously, only for Bakugo to snap back. Like hell he is. The ashen blonde glowered up at All Might as tiny explosions began dancing across his palms. And if he is, then I'll make him fight. But all this did was make All Might throw his head back and laugh. Ahahaha. Oh, how naive, young Midoriya. He grinned down to the trio eagerly. On the contrary, I am far away from giving up the ghost. You'll find that even the most weak-willed of villains don't give up so easily. Because, in fact, most of them, raising his finger, All Might pointed behind the three, have backup. Honk honk. The three students jumped and spun around, just in time to see a certain red and blue semi-truck come rolling around the corner. Shoto's eyebrows rose and his mouth fell open, while Izuku's eyes nearly popped out of his skull while his jaw smashed into the ground. All the while, Bakugo was left perplexed and still angry. What the hell? Is this really happening? Shoto whispered, giving Izuku a light shove to the shoulder. After picking up his jaw, the quirk inheritor gulped in fear, knowing his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. Optimus Prime was here, and he was rolling straight to them slowly like an imposing threat. I'm pretty sure it is. Prime pulled to a stop and parked, resulting in a sharp hiss from the truck's undercarriage as he stepped out. Hello, boys, greeted Orion Pax. I hope the three of you are ready for this. At that moment, All Might pulled back the collar of his suit, revealing a communication device that he spoke into. Recovery girl, give me sound. Back with everyone else, Autobot and student alike were left gobsmacked by what they'd just witnessed. All Might had pulled a fast one, not just on his opponents, but on all of them as well. And the very second Recovery Girl heard his request come through, she was ready to give him a piece of her mind. What is the meaning of this? The elderly woman shouted into her headset. All Might, this was not part of the... It is. All of a sudden, a new voice entered the room as the doors opened up, revealing Aizawa and Principal Nezu. Their appearance took the entire group aback, with Aizawa stating, "Is this morning, the structure of these three's test has changed to being 2-on-3. What?" Kyoka exclaimed as she confronted her teacher. "How is that fair? All Might was bad enough, but Prime, too," and at that moment, the punk rocker realized what she had let slip, and her lips sealed shut. Unfortunately, it was too late to take back what she'd said. "Huh, Prime?" Sato asked as several Autobots and half of the class began to glance around nervously. "I thought his name was Pax." It is, but," Windy stammered before quickly coming up with an explanation. "We call him Prime because he's our leader. It's a designation of sorts." "Oh, I see." Zero nodded, along with many other students, much to the others' relief. "That makes sense." Shinso raised a brow back to the screen. "Still, that doesn't exactly explain why he's out there." His sights shifted toward Kyoka curiously. "Or why it isn't fair, even though Midoriya's team still outnumbers them." Kyoka was hesitant to answer him, but thankfully, she wasn't the one who did. Because Buck quickly came to realize what was probably going to happen. "He can't seriously be thinking," the wrecker uttered, bringing everyone's attention to him. "Even in front of everyone," Sadie added, glancing around to the kids. The teens' concerns were rising by the second. "Miss Sadie, what's wrong?" Sue asked worriedly. "Yeah, you're kind of freaking us out," Toru said, shuffling uncomfortably in place. Thankfully, Principal Nizi was able to regain control of the situation. "Relax, everybody. Everything is fine, I can assure you. It's just what you're about to see might be a bit shocking." The teacher's attention went back to the head nurse. "Recovery girl, if you would kindly give us audio of the proceedings." The elderly woman didn't hesitate to comply with the mammal's request, and from there, Nezu spoke into a walkie-talkie that he had on his person. "All Might, we have audio in the monitor room." "Ah, thank you, Principal Nezu, sir," the number 1 hero replied, sending a wave to the nearest camera. "Now we can truly get things underway." "Oh Orion," Izuku uttered, still baffled by what was happening. What is this?" With a slight sigh, Orion began to explain. "Well, Izuku, a few days prior, All Might came to me with a suggestion, one that I had think about for a while. He offered me an opportunity to truly test you on everything you've come to learn over the semester in the form of this test." He nodded over to Shoto and Bakugo. "Initially, I was under the impression that he and I would be facing you 2-on-1, which was why I was initially hesitant to accept. However, when he told me that this would be part of your final exams and you would be having 2 people aid you in this endeavor, I became a bit more inclined." Izuku peered over his shoulder to the grinning hero. This was your idea." "Correct. When Aizawa told me that I'd be facing the 3 of you, I believed that this would be a golden opportunity to truly put the 3 most powerful students in the hero course to the ultimate test." All Might's smile widened in anticipation. "And now, we can truly get underway." While Bakugo was still pissed at the sudden change, he had to admit, he was getting fired up at the same time. Whatever. 3-on-1 or 3-on-2, it doesn't matter. He clenched his hands as more fireworks began shooting off of them. "I'll take whatever you dish out and hand it back to ya with 10 times the force. Ya hear me?" Shoto furrowed his brow at the explosion user. "Don't be so hasty. You have no idea what Orion Pax is capable of." His gaze shifted to Izuku, both of them aware of what the Prime was likely about to do. "Oh what, and you two are such experts." Bakugo spat back. "What am I saying? Of course you are." He bit at Izuku. "You've been getting special training from him all semester. I'll bet that's why you've gotten better so quick. This is really not the time for having this argument," Izuku asserted, before noticing that Orion was climbing back into the cab of his truck. "Oh no. You're correct, it isn't." All Might concurred before craning his head back toward the nearest camera. "But while Pax gets ready, I believe some explanations are in order, both for you 3, and your entire class, who are watching right as we speak." The boys gave a united, "Huh." Before the hero went on, "You see, class, Orion Pax has a very special quirk, called Technomorph. *WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. Before their very eyes, the entire semi-truck began to shift and move, with parts separating and moving out into different shapes. Izuku and Shoto were far less shocked than Katsuki, though, with the latter now being the one with his jaw on the floor. What the hell, he uttered breathlessly, taking a few steps back as the sides of the truck slammed down in front of them while a pair of metal hands popped out. All Might, unflinchingly so, kept speaking. Indeed, quite a spectacle, isn't it? You see, his quirk allows him to control any piece of technology to his will, and reshape it into any form he sees fit. The hero gestured upward as the truck's trailer hitch became a pair of legs and began lifting the entire body into the air. And, as you can plainly see, he mainly uses his quirk in conjunction with his rig. We're so screwed, Shoto uttered. As if we weren't screwed enough already. Izuku concurred. As Optimus Prime's head emerged from the top of the truck cab, completing his transformation, he peered down to the teenagers, his optics changing from blue to yellow. I hope you are ready, students. Because by the end of this test, one shall pass. Prime flicked his wrist, retracting his hand back into his arm so that his energon axe could take its place. And it made Bakugo let out what could only be described as a fear-induced squeal. One shall fail. The monitor room had fallen completely silent after hearing All Might's explanation, and seeing Orion Pax's quirk take shape. The only ones who weren't fazed at all were Nezu and Aizawa, since they already knew it would happen. And there you have it, the latter said. Orion Pax has joined the fight. The students' reactions were understandable. What the hell? Toru screamed. Holy crap, Shinso uttered, genuinely unable to comprehend what he was seeing. I don't think I've ever seen a quirk like this. Technological controlling quirks aren't out of the norm. Shoji said, still trying to come to terms with what he was seeing as well. But this is on another level. It was all the Autobots could do to keep straight faces, acting like they were in the know about this all along. Jeff had even put on a smile, though it was one fueled by excitement and apprehension. Oh ho ho, boy, All Might convinced Prime to bring out the big guns. He exclaimed, trying to mask his nerves as much as possible. As expected, the rest of Class 1A were completely incredulous about this, though Ojiro and Koda turned their heads to Kyoka immediately. Jiro, did you guys know about this? Kyoka had no idea how to respond, and it was clear that neither did Momo, Tenya, Keita or Ochako. Even Mina, Denki and Ajiro were left speechless. None of them had expected this to happen, and while the Autobots didn't either, they were at least good at masking themselves. I mean, kinda. We always knew that Pax was capable of changing his rig with his quirk, Tenya managed to say as he shakily adjusted his glasses, though it pained him to lie to his classmates. But we've never seen it to this extent before. Thankfully, Windy took it up from there. He only does this when he gets really serious in a fight. He can't keep it up for long, though, otherwise it puts a huge mental strain on him. At most, I'd say he's got a half hour. Buck added, which conveniently matches up with how long the test goes. Ochako laced her hands together, praying for things to go well. Deku, Todoroki, good luck. But then, out the corner of her eye, the gravity quirk user saw that a certain froggy friend of hers was staring up at the screen with a different vibe than the others. She was still shocked, of course, but she also seemed to be thinking. Her eyes were darting from side to side, as if she was putting something together in her head. It was enough to pique Ochako's interest. Sue, is everything okay? Suyu was broken out of her trance then and there, quickly covering herself with, oh, yeah, I'm fine, Ochako. It's just, her sights focused back to the screen. I can only imagine what Midoriya and the others are going to do about this new obstacle. Yeah, me too, the brunette agreed, returning her gaze back to the test as well, and failing to notice Suyu giving her a sideway glance. Ochako, do you know who Pax really is? Sue's eyes trailed across the group that stood side by side with Pax's team, a feeling of apprehension growing in her stomach. Do all of you? The first thing that Bakugo thought to do was, of course, shout at Izuku. Deku. Damn it, did you know he could do that? As much as Izuku did not want to hear more of his former friends complaining, he was still too stunned to really be bothered by it. Of all things, All Might had somehow convinced Optimus Prime to come in and be an additional opponent for their practical exam. And a surprise opponent as well, no less. Things were starting to break down more and more for him as this settled in, but he still managed to stammer back a reply. I mean, I knew what his quirk was, but I've never seen it at this scale before. He lied through his teeth. And what about you, icy hot? The explosion user seethed. Same as him, Shoto said as level-headedly as he could, having managed to calm himself a bit. This is insane. Behind them, All Might was still all smiles as his eyes gleamed, rather villainously. Oh, we'll show you insane. Faster than either of the boys could react, the number one hero vaulted himself over their heads and pulled back his arm, preparing for an earth-shaking attack. Louisiana, SMAAAAAASSSHH. Shafa Kum. Slamming his fist upon the ground as he landed in front of them, All Might unleashed a massive tremor that not only destroyed most of the main street, but also kicked up a gale force wind that sent the three boys careening backward. They landed in a heap about 5 yards away as half the town was blanketed in a cloud of dust and debris, while everything not bolted down flying every which way around them. Ack! Hawk hawk! The boys coughed and hacked, scrambling to stand as their opponents approached from the haze. Just the sight of their glowing eyes alone was enough to send chills down their spines, and they all thought the same thing: when did they get so intimidating? Now taking the role of number one villain, All Might made a declaration: who really cares if we destroy this city? With a wave of his arm, he sent the dust away, glaring at the scrambling boys. If you think of this as an exam and not a real fight, you'll be sorry. We are villains now, heroes. Remember that. We expect you to come at us with everything you have. Optimus stated as well, his now yellow optics glowering down at them. Because we will not pull any punches. Of course, Izuku was still intent on executing his original plan. It's over if we fight them head-on. Run. Just like that, he turned tail, with Shoto following after him with a curt nod. The only exception was, as expected, Bakugo. Don't tell me what to do. He saw the hero and robot approaching and raised his hand. How about a stun grenade? From his palm, a blinding burst of fiery light ignited right in the duo's faces, forcing All Might to cover his eyes. You want all I've got, All Might. Katsuki screamed as he launched himself into the fray, preparing a massive blast. Like that wasn't my plan. I'm gonna, herk. But before he could close the distance, Optimus' massive hand came in and grabbed the ashen blonde, hoisting him into the air so fast that it took a moment for his stomach to catch up. Gee goddamn it. You certainly are a loud child, aren't you? Optimus said, only for Katsuki to start peppering smaller blasts at his head. Naturally, all Prime had to do was move his head slightly to the left. A futile effort, at best. He shifted his gaze toward a terrified Izuku and Shoto, who had stopped when they saw their teammate get captured. Would anyone care to save him, or should I tighten my grip? Gah! True to his word, Prime clenched his hand, putting more pressure on Bakugo. Granted, it wasn't much for an Autobot, but for a human, it did not feel pleasant. Shoto grunted and began making use of his quirk, sending a volley of ice out from his foot toward Prime. However, the Autobot commander simply cleaved through the incoming wave with his Energon axe with little effort. Whipping his head back to Izuku, Shoto shouted, Midoriya, we need a plan to free Bakugo. I know. Izuku said, his mind racing for ideas. I just need to. Wham! Eep! The sound from the greenette's lips could only be described as terrified, as he slowly craned his head up to see All Might looming behind him. Don't think I've forgotten about you, young Midoriya. The hero playing villain said, almost mockingly so. Are you going to leave your teammate and run? Or will you confront this challenge before you? Shoto thrust his left hand out, sending a volley of flames to try and cover for Izuku, but those were blocked in an instant by Prime's axe. Not today, Shoto. Prime shook his head. If you believe it will be that easy to, boom 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 asterisk, gah. Unfortunately for Optimus, that's when Bakugo decided to point his explosion somewhere else, that being his own hand. The Autobot recoiled in pain as Bakugo sent himself flying out of his grasp and straight toward All Might, right as Izuku chose to jump away from the one-for-all user. Ow. Move it. However, Izuku couldn't maneuver himself in time, resulting in he and his tormentor colliding in midair, much to Shoto's chagrin. We're gonna fail this. They're gonna fail this. Kyoka concluded as well, facepalming at the scene before them. Recovery Girl could only hum in agreement. One wants to defeat All Might, the other thinks only of running. And Shoto's caught right in the middle. Koda shook her head disappointedly. Just great, Baku Breath's gonna cost them the finals all because of his own ego. Perhaps, but it's still too early to really tell, now isn't it? Nezu spoke up, hopping down from Aizawa's shoulder to crawl up onto the main control console. He turned to the class and raised his paw. You see, students, it is through trials such as these that heroes learn to work with one another. They must overcome their own differences to succeed and achieve victory, and right now, we're seeing just that. Yeah, but the big difference is that Bakugo can't get over himself. Denki pointed out. Mina folded her arms and huffed. Yeah, he's just too much of a jerk. Jiro grimaced at the reminders. Sure, it sucked when he learned about the Ashen Blonde's past of bullying his other friend, but at the same time, the more he hung out with Katsuki, the more he had faith that he could change. Well, sure, but let's not forget that Midoriya's not exactly having the easiest time either. He's all about running away while Bakugo and even Todoroki have no qualms fighting. A fair assessment to make, Shoto. Dr. Randall spoke up, offering his own perspective. To Izuku, he sees All Might and Prime as gods. Practically untouchable. His focus moved toward Bakugo. And while I don't know much about this boy aside from what I've heard and seen from the sports festival, it's clear that he has amazing combat sense. And finally, he directed his gaze on Shoto. Meanwhile, Todoroki seems to fall somewhere in the middle of the two extremes. It's like these three are made to balance one another out. Sadie noted. Windy pursed her lips as things seemed to only continue to fall apart in the test. Yeah, but it's too bad that neither of them seem to realize it. Question, though, Toru raised her gloved hand, pointing at Optimus who was shaking the pain out of his hand. Why did Pax react like he was in pain just then? Shouldn't Bakugo's blasts have no effect aside from damaging his robo-suit? The question gave the others pause, leading Sue to narrow her eyes at them. Yeah, that does seem kinda odd. Well, it's because when he uses his quirk, he has to be in physical contact with the tech he controls. Sid answered hastily. Yeah, and because of that, his nervous system essentially merges with the technology temporarily. Sunny added. Hence, he feels pain whenever his armor gets damaged. Though his actual body doesn't get hurt physically. Ooh, yeah, that makes sense. Ojiro nodded, with Koda doing the same next to him. There was a silent sigh of respite from the disguised Autobots and their human compatriots. The class had all bought it, aside from one. They know. Sue thought to herself, seeing the relieved expressions of her friends. They for sure know. Back at the battle, Katsuki had gotten back up, stalking his way toward All Might and Optimus once more. And like clockwork, Izuku was getting in his way. Kachan. Outta my way. Now more than ever, I beg you to just listen to me. The Greenette screamed, completely unmoving even as Bakugo brushed past him. It was bad enough that we just had to face All Might at first, but now with Orion here, this really is way too much. Katsuki snapped his head back, his eyes dilated in anger. I said shut up. I will win this. He turned away from Izuku and trudged forth, even if he felt like keeling over then and there. That's what it means, to be a hero, Deku. All of a sudden, Izuku's eyes widened, his mind flashing back to their childhood. All Might is the coolest ever. He always beats the bad guys. He could hear younger Kachan's voice clear as day in his head, and it made him realize something. Young man, Optimus began, raising a hand in advisement, if your perception of what being a hero is means achieving victory alone, then you are sorely misguided. And just like that, Katsuki's anger was spiked again. Don't you lecture me, damn it. Thrusting his palms up, he unleashed an immensely powerful explosion that encompassed both Prime and All Might, making him smile wickedly, only for that grin to fade when he saw Optimus striding out of the blast radius, none the worse for wear. As I was saying, he continued, as if nothing had happened, there is a fine line between being a hero and being a memory. Prime reached behind his back, pulling out his ion blaster. The sight made Katsuki's constitution take a slight dip. And you are about to cross it. Pow! A single shot toward the ground was enough to fling Bakugo and the others down the street, the blonde screaming in rage all the way. Izuku was the first to try and get up from the attack, but he wouldn't be able thanks to Prime's partner in crime. Incoming, heroes. I have a special gift for the one who wants to run. Crash. Guh. All at once, the air in Izuku's lungs was forced out as All Might landed on him, bringing down a twisted metal barricade that pinned him to the dirt. In a flash, the number one hero launched himself straight toward Shoto and Bakugo, slamming his fists into their guts. The two boys immediately regurgitated the contents of their stomachs before tumbling across the destroyed street, much to Izuku's horror. No. Kachan. Todoroki. Astonishingly, while Shoto remained motionless on the ground, Bakugo wasted no time in trying to stand, which only reminded Izuku of what he was thinking back to earlier. His gaze shifted between Katsuki and All Might, the latter approaching him from behind. Back when we were kids, you admired him just as much as I did. The way he made winning seem so effortless, I get it. You may be a jerk, but I get it. Summoning all of his strength, Izuku began to wriggle himself out of his predicament, right as Optimus stepped over him to get to Shoto. You always have one goal you fight for in everything you do, you make sure that you're the winner, and I did admire you for that. But now. Ahahaha. I know why you're so angry, young Bakugo. All Might said as he stepped next to the explosion user, who was still trying to return to his senses. Shoto finally started to move and he went to stand up, but Optimus came in and pressed his hand down firmly on his back. Stay down, if you know what's good for you, the Prime ordered while All Might continued on. It's because of young Midoriya's sudden improvement, right? But you need to remember your rankings when the year first began. After all, it's much easier to level up when you're a novice. The hero craned his head down to Bakugo, spreading his arms out to emphasize his point. Do you understand what I'm getting at? You're wasting your full potential, boy. You still have so much room to grow stronger, and I don't just mean your quirk. Shut up, All Might. Bakugo growled, shakily raising his head to show his rather defeated expression. If I'm so bad that I need to get help from a weakling like him, then I'd rather lose this. You hear me? His statement made Izuku's eyes widen, with Optimus saying, it seems that you still cannot see the forest for the trees, young man. But, if that is how you feel. All Might balled his fist and brought it up above Katsuki's head. Right. Just remember that's what you said, hero. He went to bring his punch down and end it all right there. Womp. But Izuku managed to sock Katsuki in the face first. Don't you dare say that you'd rather lose. He bellowed, having activated his helmet and put on his bright red scarf. Let's win this together, Kachan. Todoroki. Pressing his hand against the dirt, Shoto created a massive ice pillar that propelled him straight up, taking Prime off guard and making him stumble as his hand was forced off of him. Getting to his feet, Shoto then made an ice bridge that he slid across, while Izuku picked up Bakugo and bounded off into the nearest alleyway. Gah, well, certainly didn't expect young Midoriya to swoop in like that. All Might said, taken aback by the events. Optimus stood back up, shaking the residual ice off his hand. Indeed. It seems we were both caught unawares. Are you alright, my friend? All Might was wringing his wrists, clearly still dealing with some discomfort. Yes, it's just, did young Hatsume really need to make these so heavy? Izuku was running as fast as his full cowling would let him, heading further and further down the alleyway to get as far away from their opponents as possible. Even while carrying his former friend, that required little effort, though it was clear that Bakugo himself didn't appreciate it. Let me go, you bastard, he grumbled. Not just yet, Izuku insisted. Just a bit further, URK. I said, put me down, damn it. Returning the favor from earlier, Katsuki punched Izuku right in the shoulder, knocking them both to the ground. They slumped against the alley walls, breathing hard and heavy while trying to regain their bearings. At that point, Shoto arrived, sliding down the remainder of his ice bridge. Everyone all right? What do you think, you icy hot bastard? Bakugo sneered up at Izuku from his resting place. The damn nerd just keeps making things more complicated. Izuku sighed at Bakugo's indignant insult, but ultimately shrugged it off, propping himself up against the wall while retracting his helmet. Guys, I really can't think of a way for us to beat All Might and Orion. or how to make a clean getaway from them either. His features hardened toward Bakugo in particular. But Kacchan, before you give up, you could at least try letting us use our powers to help. You can't say that you're okay with losing, it goes against everything you stand for. He narrowed his eyes as Katsuki lowered his head slightly. I know you, and you never give up. You're always fighting, even back when we were kids. Remember when we were in first grade, and you beat up a couple of fourth graders that got in your way? And you won. Shoto raised his eyebrows at the story. Huh, impressive, he said without a hint of sarcasm. PSH, those idiots had it coming. Bakugo brushed off. So what? I remember what you said back then. Izuku continued. The most amazing hero always wins. In the end, they come out on top, no matter what. So tell me, how can you give up now? There was a momentary pause as Bakugo took in a sharp breath through his nose, sucking up whatever dignity he had left as he shook his head. Damn it, Deku, I hate it when you have a freaking point. Summoning every ounce of strength, Katsuki got to his feet, placing a hand against the wall for balance. Alright, listen up, cuz I'm not about to repeat myself. His sights shifted toward Shoto as well. That goes for you, too, icy hot. All Might's speed is insane. No matter where we try to run and hide, there's no way to avoid fighting. And that Pax guy's power armor is crazy strong. I felt that firsthand. Shoto nodded in agreement. So did I. The force he can exert is immense. So, I take it you have a plan to deal with both. Damn right. Katsuki eyed Izuku with annoyance. So long as you both follow exactly what I say, we should be able to get one over on him. Izuku pursed his lips hesitantly, only to ultimately sigh and activate his helmet once again. Okay, so what's the game plan? All Might and Pax won't be stopped by anything less than full power attack. Bakugo explained. I learned that earlier with my last couple of blasts. A slight grin came to the young man's features. So, we give him everything we got at point-blank range. Our only option is to inflict damage and put some distance between us. Then, we head for the escape gate. A combination of fighting and running. Shoto concluded with a nod. I like it. Katsuki furrowed his brow toward his former friend. Deku. So do I, surprisingly enough. Good. Katsuki took one of his grenade gauntlets and slipped it off his arm, tossing it to Izuku. The greenette was left surprised, to say the least. Cuz you'll need this to pull it off. There should be a good amount of sweat built up in there, so when I give you the signal, pull the damn pin and aim for All Might. He craned his head back to Shoto. And you'll do the same with your ice against Pax, got it? Once again, Shoto nodded. Right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're following your lead on this one, Bakugo. The statement made the ashen blonde scoff, though on the inside, he felt an odd sense of accomplishment, and maybe just a bit of appreciation. Of course, he wasn't about to let those two know about it. PFF'd, whatever. Let's just get this done. Back on the main street, All Might was standing atop Prime's cab in vehicle mode, the duo rolling down the overturned road in search for their targets. Where did those three run off to? I can't believe that we lost track of them. If they're hiding, that could mean they intend on heading for the escape gate. Orion noted, scanning his surroundings with his holoform eyes. I could have sworn I saw Shoto go in this direction, though. Just as they passed an unassuming alleyway, the duo were taken by surprise when a voice screamed at them, "You're going the wrong way." Screeching to a halt, Prime spun around, where he and All Might saw Bakugo launching himself out and raising his palm up to attack. All Might leapt off of Prime's roof, narrowly avoiding the first round of blasts. Optimus himself transformed and rolled, planting his chest on the ground to duck out of the way. Is this supposed to be a sneak attack? The hero questioned as Prime got to his feet, the duo pursuing the explosion user. This is pissin' me off. Katsuki grumbled in his mind as he continued to attack, the force of his blasts putting more distance between himself and his adversaries. I can't believe I'm working with someone like you. Someone who shouldn't even be here. Once they were at the perfect distance, Bakugo shouted for his backup, Deku. Todoroki. In an instant, Izuku and Shoto jumped through the residual smoke from Bakugo's blasts, coming in on All Might and Prime's rears. Huh, so that's their game. Optimus surmised. Using his quirk, Bakugo launched himself in the air and gave the word, shoot now. Pulling the pin on Bakugo's gauntlet, Deku aimed point blank at his mentor. "I'm sorry, All Might. No hard feelings, Prime," Shoto added as he unleashed a massive ice wave that created spires that went higher than the buildings, much like he did at the sports festival. Optimus and All Might were both blown backward as a result. A's was Izuku, who heard and felt a pop in his arm. "Gah, my shoulder." He managed to stay standing, but immediately gripped his arm when it was obvious that it was out of joint. "Midoriya, you alright?" Shoto asked, moving to help. "Fine, for now, at least." "Ah, geez. He really uses this thing. Run, you idiots." The duo craned their heads up to see Katsuki propelling himself toward the exit gate using mini blasts. Ignoring the pain, Izuku activated full cowling and called back, "Right behind you." Before dashing off, with Shoto creating an ice path that he skated alongside him. Once the three were gone and the dust had settled, Optimus and All Might were left to pick themselves up. The leader of the Autobots brought a hand to his helm, his processor recalibrating while regaining his bearings. "Ah, they got us." "Seems so, yes." All Might concurred, standing up with his friend. "A compromise between running and fighting. That's pretty decent for an impromptu plan. From what I've seen, it appears that Izuku and young Bakugo are finally cooperating." Prime's optics zoomed in on the teens as they fled. And the fact that Shoto and Bakugo also seem on the same page is notable as well. "Yes, but I doubt that all of their issues are resolved." Despite the smile on his face, All Might was actually thinking quite carefully about all of this. Young Midoriya and Bakugo in particular have so many complicated issues piled up that they don't even know how to interact anymore. Hawk hawk. Peering down, Optimus saw All Might lift his hand to his mouth, and he immediately became concerned. "Are you alright, my friend?" Bringing his hand away, All Might saw a small splatter of blood, indicating that his time was almost up. "I'm fine, don't worry. But we'll need to wrap this up quickly." Lifting his head up, he began focusing on their primary goal, to stop the three boys from passing at all costs. They were villains, after all. What those boys are going through, it's not the kind of thing that can be resolved in a single test. But I'm sure their cooperation here will mean big things for them in the future. Indeed. Optimus nodded before transforming into vehicle mode. "So then, shall we end this?" "Yes." All Might entered a crouch, ready to sprint after their targets. It's time this teacher did his best to school them. Prime's engine kicked to life, ready to enter maximum overdrive. Right, let's roll out. And this of Season 2 Part 43 of this What If. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.